right down to that thing that bees make. Any of the kids know what is it that bees make that we eat? They make the what? Call that? They make honey, and they also make wax that can be used for candles. And they also make a sticky stuff called propolis, which is like a glue for the inside of their hive. So imagine that. That tiny bee makes three things. They make honey, they make wax that we could use for candles, and they make a sticky glue, all from that one tiny bee. We know that honeybees have been on the earth for about 45 million years, and they have not changed in 45 million years, which means they didn't evolve. They survived that whole time period because they were uniquely adapted to survive. And they make honey from pollen. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to show you honey that's made from bees. We're going to give you a chance to taste the honey. We're going to show you the honeycomb. We're going to show you how it's extracted, what a beekeeper would do to get the honey out of the combs. And we're going to take you into our gardens over here. These are the educational gardens. And when you're in there, we're going to go to the hives. We're going to open up the hives. We're going to take out the honeybees. We're going to bring them over to you, and we'll hold them this close to you so that you are able to see them. Honeybees do sting. They don't want to sting. They're what we call docile bees. They're not aggressive. Last thing they want to do is sting you. Some bees, yellow jackets, wasps, etc., they don't mind stinging you. They're aggressive, and you want to avoid them. But what we're hoping that you'll see is how we handle them when you're calm around them, that they are actually very easy to be around. We have a major crisis in our country right now with honeybees. And I just spoke to somebody the other day, and it was about the 8th person I spoke to who has hives, and it was the first person out of 8 who said their hives survived the winter. Everybody else, people who've been doing beekeeping for 30, 40 years, lost their hives. The bees didn't survive the winter. If you see a honeybee, you're seeing a honeybee that's not native, that's not out in nature. You're seeing it from somebody's hive. In our country, native honeybees are just about non-existent. They're not there on their own. And honeybees pollinate 37% of all the produce in our country. We need them. And without the honeybees, it is dramatically going to change the food chain. And Europe is having a big crisis with honeybees as well. The question is, what's happening to honeybees? How come so many of them are dying? We don't know for sure. We do know that there's a natural parasite that honeybees have. It's called nosema. And that nosema is kept in balance. And scientists are thinking that something is causing an imbalance. What is it? Is it chemicals that we put on our lawns or use on the golf course or use in other places? We have a lot of chemicals in our society. Is it electrical lines? Is it the monoculture of how we're growing things nowadays? Is it the wear and tear on bees being moved from place to place? Something in our environment is changing, and it's affecting the bees. We have bees here for a couple of reasons. We have bees because if we have more bees, we have more tomatoes, we have more cucumbers, we have more peppers. Any plant that has a flower, and from that flower produces the fruit, like a tomato is a fruit, cucumber is a fruit, has to be pollinated. So farms love to have bees because we get more things to sell at our farm stand. And we also have the bees because we want to encourage other people to have bees to actually help a part of nature to stay in balance. Now, the bees create cells in which to lay their eggs. Now, predominantly the eggs are laid by a queen bee. She's larger than the other bees. And we are going to see, we won't be able to show you the queen bee today because we'd have to take her away from the hive. And we don't want her to fall out. So what we're going to show you right now, and you're going to see over time, these are combs from the hive. In about 10 minutes, you will see honeybees over here. They're smelling the honey. And that's why flowers have a scent. It's an adaptation to attract the bees. And this, you can see the glistening honey inside of here. And you're going to see part of it is what we call capped. Now, the honey that's not capped means that it's still drying out. Honey has to lose a certain amount of moisture. Now, here's what the bees do. They go out, they collect pollen, and they eat it. It goes into one of their stomachs. And then they spit it up. And when they spit it up, they take a protein from their head, they wipe it into the honey, and they put it into the honeycomb. And that makes the honey. So when you're eating honey, you're actually eating something regurgitated from a bee's stomach. Isn't that
Is this
fun?
comb, they made the comb, or is that...
They will make this comb, this symmetrical in nature. We actually start them, and we can show you some starter comb to give them a head start. But they will make every single cell perfect. And they fill it, and then they'll cap the whole thing. What we'll show you a little later is we'll show you how to take a hot knife and actually cut off the capping so that all the honey will drip out. And if you see this orange stuff on the side, right there, that's propolis. They eat tree sap, the bees do. Then they regurgitate that, and they use it as cement to hold their hive together. So we actually have to break this glue, this natural glue that they make, in order to pull the frames apart.
So the honey is used to feed the baby?
Thank you. Here was a great question. I shouldn't have left it out. Why do they make honey in the first place? Well, bees stay here. They overwinter. Not all insects do. Many insects actually die for the winter or lay eggs or they migrate like butterflies. Honeybees all stay in the hive. So they make the honey to survive the winter. Now, our bees here at the farm did not make enough honey to survive the winter. They were brand new last year. You get about 10 to 12,000 bees in a pollinator. That's small. By the end of the summer, you really want 60,000 bees more to gather the honey. So we were looking at our hives in October, and we saw how very few frames were filled out with honey, and it was pretty clear that they weren't going to have enough food to survive the winter. It was a hard winter, the beginning part, regardless. Now, they will eat the honey to get through the winter, but honey is also eaten during the summer, and it's eaten by the other bees. The queen will go to the cells, and she'll lay an egg. The queen that is very healthy can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day. The worker bees, which are all female, the males don't do any work, the worker bees will come to the cell, and when the egg hatches, it looks like it's a larva, which means a little white wriggly worm. And that little worm stays inside, like an inchworm, except much smaller, and the worker bees come over, and they feed it pollen, and they feed it honey. And you might see, when we bring the bees around, you'll see some bees that have yellow clumps on their legs. They have pollen combs on their legs. Bees go to flowers to collect the pollen on the anthers. And as they're collecting it, they rub their legs on the anthers, and the combs collect the pollen. You can see it on bumblebees sometimes. A bumblebee might be flying real crooked and slow because it's loaded down with fat yellow legs. It's bringing it, it's like driving a boat. It just can't go in a straight line. You can actually walk behind it. They're so weighted down. They bring back the pollen, and then some of the pollen they put directly into the cells for food, and some they will eat along with nectar and then regurgitate it to make the honey. Now, over time, that little white wriggly larva gets large enough that it's not going to grow anymore. So then, it is sealed up. It's capped. And the babies are called brood. And we're going to show you some of the brood capping inside of the frames. And after, in total length, about 21 days, the cap will open up, and out will come an adult honeybee. Hopefully, it's a worker bee. We really don't want the males. We don't want the drones. They're not going to do any work. Their job is simply to mate with the queen. But the queen mates 8 times in the first week or so of being born, of emerging as an adult, and then she doesn't need to mate again in her lifetime. She can live a couple of years. So your drones or your male bees, they're just hanging around eating food. And if you get into October and the female bees, the worker bees, are thinking they don't have enough food, they get rid of the males. So they go up to the males and they bite off their wings, and then they push them out of the hive. And they can't fly back in. They're just dead weight. You got to get rid of them. Got to move the colony forward. The male bees, called drones, they don't sting, but they're much larger. So we may be able to even show you some of the male bees that are in there. You can. Yeah. They're significantly larger than a small honeybee. Now, what we'll show you afterwards, after we take you in there and we show you the bees themselves, is we'll show you with a hot knife how to actually cut straight down, and then the honey would drip out. And a beekeeper would do